Well, thank you for that warm introduction. I know it's cold outside, but I think maybe today we can warm things up inside of what I'm going to share with you. I am Ben Jans. I flew a Cobra gunship in Vietnam, and today I'm going to have you kids with me on some flights to Vietnam. So we'll start here. I'm going to share three things with you. The first thing is I'm going to share with you some experiences I've had in Vietnam. We're going to fly 4 or 5 missions together. What effect those missions had on me after I got back. And then finally, and the most important of all, the reason I'm here with you today is to share my thoughts with you on Psalm 91. So today, I shall start with war, but we shall end in peace. Just a little background. I graduated, from Floyd Valley High School way back in 1965, went to Northwestern, graduated in 69, and then from there I went to Gardner Hayfield. I taught school for 1 year. And in January of 1970, with the draft lottery, my number came up 83. And I knew right then and there that I was going to go to Vietnam. The guidance counselor there said, Ben, helicopters is a thing of the future. If I were you, I'd get involved in helicopters and go to flight school and learn to fly helicopters in the service. I followed his advice. I became what you call a warrant officer. In those days, a warrant officer, the purpose of them was to fly. And I wanted to fly. So that was our main job. The only ones we really had under us was our crew chiefs. And so the rest of the time, we flew. I arrived in Vietnam on November 10 of 1971, and I was there through November 5 of 72. So this year is exactly 50 years from when I was in Vietnam. I knew that I had a lot of family and friends praying for me when I left. I had Sunday school teachers pray for me. Every Sunday, the minister in Middleburg, where I went to church, prayed for me. He did not miss one Sunday, my folks said. And what I did not know until quite a time after I had returned from Vietnam was that every day that I was in Vietnam, my mother read Psalm 91. For sure, once a day, sometimes twice, and if she was having a tough time, 3 or more times. I'm going to read Psalm 91 here in just a minute. But first, I'm going to ask you, I understand there are 285 students here, and I'm going to ask all 285 students today to imagine that today you are going with me to war. We are going off to war. You will be with me. I will take you in the cockpit of that aircraft. You will be my co-pilot. You will see what I have seen, and you will help me fire the weapons. You have gone to primary school. You have 120 hours of primary flight time. You have instrument and Huey flight time, which is another 120 hours. And you have flown in a Cobra for about 40 or 50 hours. So you are approaching 300 hours of flight time, and you will be with me. Now, for the rest of you, the teachers, administrators, and so, today I'm going to ask you to imagine that you have loved ones going off to war. You will be back home, but you have loved ones. You have your son, your daughter, or your grandchild, or one of the 285 students who are going to be with me today. You know that we will be in the front lines where the action is. You know that almost every day we will be shooting at and trying to kill the enemy. But you also know that almost every day the enemy will be shooting at you and trying to kill your loved one. Now remember, this is 50 years ago. So you have no cell phones, you have no computers, you have no Skype. The only communication with back home is by letters, and that would usually take somewhere around 10 days to arrive. There will be times when you wonder if your loved one is still alive or not. And the one thing that you do not want to see someday is when you look out your front window and you see a dark blue or black car slowly coming down the road and turning onto your driveway, and two military personnel comes out of the vehicle and comes knocking at your door. Because if you see that, you know you're in for a bad, bad, bad day. So, with that background, I shall read the words that my mother read every day when I was in Vietnam, Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you make the Most High your dwelling, even the Lord who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you. No disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that your foot will not strike a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him, and with long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Now I'm going to turn here a little bit because I'm going to show you some slides of the helicopters that we worked with, and of course the Cobra gunship. So next slide. Okay, that's just the front end of what we call a Scout. You can go to the next one too, it gives a side view. That is a Scout. When you do a hunter-killer mission, that's what they're called, hunter-killer team, the Scouts will go up front. Usually you will have 2 Scouts. And when you get to the area you're going to work, those 2 Scouts will go out in front and circle. You have a pilot in there and probably a gunner right behind him with a machine gun. And as soon as you find the enemy, then usually the gunner will throw out a smoke bomb and mark the target, and then they will exit the area, and then we would come in with our Cobras and eliminate the enemy. Next. This is what they call a Huey. It's a utility helicopter. It carries about 5 or 6 troops. It brings supplies around. If it was a big mission, the mission commander would be in there with numerous radios. And so the guys on the ground, the Air Force, the Navy, us, and that they can communicate with everyone. So that's what would be in there. And one important thing as far as we as Cobra pilots were concerned with and thankful for is that if we got shot down, the odds are pretty good that that helicopter would come in and pick us up. Okay, next. This is the front end of a Cobra. It's very narrow. In the front seat is a guy that controls the turret, which is in the bottom there. The back seat does most of the flying, although you can also fly it from the front. Just go to the next picture here. So it's a 2-man, one in front of the other. The most experienced man is going to sit in the back. Probably the newer guy will be in the front. You're going to be there maybe for 5-6 months until you know what's going on. But you're going to work together. You can fly it from either position. You can shoot the weapons from each position. So on that side there, the right side, you see in the inside is a 6-barreled machine gun, and that would shoot somewhere around 450 to 650 rounds per minute. If you have that on there, or very few have that on there, but most of them had more rockets than so. Next picture. Okay, most of them were equipped that way. When it was set up for that way with the weapons, you would have 52 rockets. You would have 3 kinds of rockets. You would have an HE rocket, which you would use like when you would shoot tanks, and so it would penetrate steel, things like that. The second one would be what we called Willie Pete, or white phosphorus. You would use that rocket if you're going to burn buildings and things like that. And third, and in my opinion, the most gruesome and so of all, is what we call nails. Each rocket would be filled with 2,200, they call them flechettes, we call them nails. And when you shoot that rocket, it would go, and at approximately 50, 60 feet above the ground, that rocket would explode. You'll see a red puff of smoke, and then there, the nails would go there and just literally pick the enemy right off their feet. So those are the rockets that are under the wings. Next picture. Okay, in the front, you'll be sitting in that front seat today. In the front, you will control that underneath the aircraft. You'll take the sight, and as you move the sight right or left, that'll move around, up and down, whatever. You will have a sight where you can see the crosshairs. You will have a machine or a 6-barreled minigun, which has a cover on it so you don't have any rounds and so going when it's on the ground. So, but that's 6 barrels. You can set that at 2,000 rounds a minute or 4,000 rounds a minute. Every 7th or 8th round will be a tracer, so you can exactly see where those bullets and so are going. On the right side, it's not real plain, but that is a 40-millimeter grenade launcher. That shoots 400 rounds a minute. That's a much slower round. Each weapon on that aircraft is for a certain thing. Immediately when the scouts, or if there's guys on the ground calling for you to come and shoot, usually you will shoot the minigun first. You will scatter it around. The enemy will be down because bullets, 2,000 and 4,000 rounds of bullets are coming at them. By then, usually we're squared away. The guy in the back, the pilot, will shoot the rockets. And then as you come from your break and you turn, you'll be shooting that 40-millimeter grenade launcher. It's a slow round, so that when you're turning and you're real vulnerable there, and you're turning, those bullets or grenades are landing. And by the time you pull out, then your wingman should be coming in with the same thing. And you can continue circling and putting pressure on the enemy. Next round. That one happens to have 2 6-barrel miniguns. So now you can double those 6,000 rounds a minute. So we never had that. Next. There's the sight for the front seat. That's what you grab, and then you turn. You can look right through that sight. The left one, you see a red button. That's for the grenade launcher. The right one is for the minigun. You'll be sitting in that position right there. Next. This is the sight for the guy in the back seat when he shoots the rockets. Go ahead. That's just the instrument panel. These are the instruments just for the flying part. All the weapons stuff and so is all on the sides in there. You see way in the lower left, those are, I think, 7 buttons for 7 different radios. You'll have 7 radios going, talking to you, just amongst the Cobras with the other aircraft, like I say, Navy, Air Force, all that kind of stuff, all going at one time. Next. I have these last these two pictures here are Marine. The reason I have them there is we worked a lot with the Marines. We covered them with our Cobras, and I'm going to share with you a mission or two where these are the aircraft I talk about when they got shot down. And so, next one, that's a Chinook, also Marines there. We had a lot, like I say, to do with the Marines. Go ahead. Okay, and that's me then. That's on October 25, 1972, after I made my last flight, a powerful 154 pounds at that time. So, but yeah, in that picture, I had made it and I was ready to go home. Next. Okay, here's a 2.5 minute little film on a Cobra shooting. There's no sound. I'll just let you look at it. We call this a Sunday afternoon joy ride, because there can't be so terrible much going on here, because you wouldn't be taking pictures if you were getting shot at or anything like that. So this is just to show you kind of what the aircraft is. That's the front, the six-barreled gun is shooting. There's a boat in there, most likely a Viet Cong, on a boat. Whenever it's a river, they come down the river with some supplies for the North Vietnamese and stuff like that. Yeah, they're blowing up just a little boat down there. It's probably along the delta, so more toward the south. But we were always up north, about 35 miles from the DMZ, Quan Tri Island. So this is just about it, I think. Okay. That's the live flu company with the shark's teeth. That'd be the fourth cab. Okay, when I arrived in Vietnam on November 10 of 71, um, they came in the evening. They were having a memorial service for two Huey pilots and their crew chiefs that had been killed the day before, and the pilots were my classmates before I went to Cobra School. During the regular school, everybody graduates in Hueys. Okay, so you have 240 hours by that time. Everybody's in Hueys. For some reason, the top 5 in the class could choose what helicopter they wanted to go into. And I'll be honest, I have never been toward the top of my class in anything, but for some reason, this clicked with me. And I was one of the 5, and I chose the Cobra because I didn't want to sit with a Huey or so when you're in a landing zone and you're loading troops, unloading troops or supplies, and the enemy's shooting at you there. You're just sitting duck. I wanted to be up at least with the rockets and the weapons, and so and not just be sitting there. Okay, well, little did I know that the enemy knows that too, so you're the one they're going to shoot at first because you're the one with the weapons. But anyway, my first mission was 4 days later, on November 14, 1971. And I flew with Captain Haney. And he was a very experienced pilot. He was there on his second tour. And on that very first mission, our mission was to go and insert some South Vietnamese troops and gather intelligence. To cover a Huey was going to drop them in so they could scout out the area. Well, as the Huey was approaching the landing zone, the pilot yelled on his radio that he was taking fire from 3 o'clock, which is his right side. And I could see, when I looked out the window in the front there on that right side, I could see about a dozen, 15 of the enemy along the tree line, and they were shooting at that Huey. I fired that 6-barrel minigun. I seen the bullets I fired hit the enemy. A few seconds later, Captain Haney fired 3-4 pair of nails. I seen those nails explode, and I seen the nails hit the enemy. This all happened in less than 30 seconds, and all was quiet. I had survived basically my first flight, but I had also taken flight for the very first time in my life. And on the way back to base, I shall never forget what Captain Haney said to me. He said, "Way to go, kid. You did good." I suppose we killed around a dozen, 15, maybe 20 of them today. You've been in country now, what, about 4 days? Only 361 more days to go. Welcome to Vietnam. Reality set in. I wasn't in good old Sioux County, Iowa anymore. And a few weeks later, I realized that the words that Captain Haney said to me on that first mission that I flew in Vietnam became true. That day was the first day of just another normal, average, typical day. So I say to each of my 285 pilots or co-pilots who are flying with me here today, way to go, kid. You did good. I suppose we killed around a dozen, 15, maybe 20. You've been here, what now, 4 days? You only have 361 more days to go. Welcome to Vietnam. When I was in Vietnam, I seen B-52 bombers bomb the enemy. I seen Air Force and Navy jets bomb the enemy, but I also seen them get shot down and crash in the mountains or in the ocean. A number of times we covered the helicopter who would try and rescue them. On April 1 of 1972, the enemy from North Vietnam came across the line into South Vietnam with tanks, personnel carriers, trucks, other military weapons. They were chasing the South Vietnamese south. They were running over them with their tanks, and they were just shooting them on the run. We came there, and but we asked, what do we do? We have enemy and we have friendlies all on top of each other. Air Force and Navy jets also came there. They said, shoot to kill, because there's nothing else that we can do. So we did. And after a couple hours, there were all of the trucks, the personnel carrier, their tanks and so were all blown up, and there were dead bodies all over the place. I seen helicopters carrying troops either in and out of hot landing zones. They got hit, they crashed, they burned. On July 11, 1972, we covered 34 Marine Chinooks and Sea Stallions. Those are those two Marines helicopters that I showed you. They were inserting 840 South Vietnamese troops into 2 different landing zones. 18 of them went in one landing zone, 16 in the other. One of them got blown out of the sky by an SA-7 heat-seeking missile. Another one had loaded its troops but was on fire and crashed. There were 16 Cobras covering that mission. 4 of us led the Marine helicopters in. My aircraft took a lot of hits. When you're in the aircraft and you're taking hits, you have a helmet on. It's very tight around your ears so you can hear your radio communication and all that kind of stuff. So when you're taking hits and you know that the aircraft is taking fire, it sounds like you're in a popcorn popper. That's how I explain it. But anyway, the alarms were sounding because we were taking hits, and so oil pressure lights were flashing, and the controls were sluggish. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I'd sure like to be 50. Just get me through this. I thought 50 was old at the time. But somehow the aircraft kept running. When we nursed it back to base, we made what we call a, a running landing. You come in at about 70, 80 miles an hour, and you just go sliding down the runway. You practice these emergencies and stuff. And after we landed, the crew chiefs counted over 170 holes in that aircraft was caused by bullets and anti-aircraft fire. I received 18 medals in Vietnam. Some were for meritorious achievement, but 4 of them were for valor and heroism. Now, one of the 4 was because I took out an anti-aircraft gun sight without any cover because the other Cobras were without ammunition. But the other 3 were all rescue missions. I'm going to read you an account of one of those rescue missions. Now, I want to make it clear that all of the helicopter pilots in Nam flew these types of missions, especially Cobra pilots and so. All of them received a number of awards. This was just average. I just want to give you a feeling of what these rescues were like. I'll give you a little background. Some American advisors and South Vietnamese Marines were at a forward observation point by the DMZ, that's way north, going into North Vietnam. They were surrounded by the North Vietnamese Army. 2 Air Force helicopters picked them up, but both of them got shot down. Then we covered the next helicopters that tried to pick them up again. This is Air Medal 17th Award of V Device, and this happened on May 2, 1972. It says here, for heroism while engaged in aerial flight in connection with military operations against a hostile force. Warrant Officer Jantz distinguished himself by an exceptionally valorous action while serving as pilot of a Cobra gunship, providing air support for 2 utility helicopters on an extraction of American advisors, downed Air Force personnel, and wounded Vietnamese Marines. Although there was an intense anti-aircraft fire, heat-seeking rockets, large caliber and indirect artillery fire, Warrant Officer Jantz engaged numerous enemy positions with his rockets, his miniguns, and grenade launcher, and continued to deliver accurate suppressive fire against the enemy positions. Upon departing the landing zone, one of the utility helicopters was destroyed in midair by a heat-seeking rocket, and the other was shot down. After his aircraft took numerous hits, which caused the loss of his stability control system. That's a computer system that keeps everything straight, so when you fire the rockets, it takes into effect wind and all these other kinds of things. And the loss of his number 1 hydraulic system, we do have 2. Warrant Officer Jantz remained on station to lay down a protective ring of fire against the downed crews until they could be rescued. His actions were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his units, and the United States Army. My best friend in Vietnam was a guy by the name of William Bill Haynes. We were roommates. He was 24 years old. He was from Warren, Ohio. We had flown together as pilot, co-pilot. I had flown as his wingman. He had flown as mine. And on April 28, 1972, Bill was flying with Paul Martindale. I was flying with Ken Mick. And while scouting the enemy near North Vietnam, we came upon some enemy tanks. As we engaged the tanks, I noticed that Paul and Bill did not break from their run. I tried to get in contact with them on the radio, but there was no response. But soon I looked out my side window, and I seen his aircraft turn slowly upside down. He crashed, it exploded, and he burned, and I lost my closest friend in Vietnam. My last fight in Vietnam was October 25 of 72. I had made it. I was going home. And I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, by Colorado Springs. And another friend of mine was Billy Hackler from Mississippi. He had also just gotten back from Nam. He had survived Nam. He was 25 years old, but he was married. He had 3 kids under the age of 5. And about 4 months later, while flying a Cobra, the transmission in his helicopter froze. He crashed in the mountains of Colorado. he burned and he also died. I escorted what was left of Bill's burned body back home to Mississippi, and I helped his wife Julie and those 3 little kids move back to Mississippi. And Bill's parents had questions, as any parent who loses a son would have. They wanted to know what happened. What was the mission? Why did the aircraft crash? And was anyone in them or with him, or did their son die all alone? And I imagine that the parents of my friends, William Haynes and Paul Martindale, asked the same question when their sons died in Vietnam. I was thinking of making the military a career, but after that accident of Bill Hackler, I had had enough, and about 3 months later, I received my honorable discharge. You either had to kind of re-up that you were going to be there quite a while, or it was time to leave. I returned home, went into real estate and auctioneering in Sioux Center, and a few years later, I met Jan, and we got married. A few years after that, we had 2 children, Christy and Brian. But during the day, I was selling some real estate, etc. But at night, I was still living and flying missions in Vietnam with my buddies. I was watching the bullets and the tracers from the minigun. I was watching the rockets explode. I was watching the nails from them rockets hit the enemy and nailing body parts to trees, and I could hear the bullets and the anti-aircraft fire hit my aircraft. And there was one short encounter that I relive almost every night. 2 scout helicopters were leading us, our 2 Cobras, north to the DMZ. It was right along the beach. I was in the front seat of the 2nd Cobra. The scouts had missed one single Viet Cong who was in a foxhole. The pilot in the front Cobra said that on the radio that he was taking fire. We were cruising at about 180 miles an hour, 160 knots, and we're only about 20 feet off the ground because of heat seekers. And I seen what looked like a 16 or 17-year-old kid firing a machine gun mounted on a tripod and turning that barrel on us. I immediately fired the minigun. I could see by now we were so close, it was just out my window. I could see the hate on his face turn to terror because he knew that he was in big trouble and that he was going to die. This entire event took maybe 3 or 4 seconds, but the dreams, the nightmares, and the memories will last forever. And I also wondered, why did my friends have to die? I know that both William Hayes, Bill Hayes, and Billy Hackler were Christians. Others in the unit said that Paul Martindale was too. I'm sure that their parents were praying for their sons' safety and protection. The prayers of my parents were answered yes, but the prayers of my friends' parents were answered no. About 20 years ago, a number of things happened. But 2 things that really affected my life was, one, when I attended a guy by the name of Dave Mulder's Sunday school class in our church in Sioux Center. And we were in that fireside room downstairs, and Dave asked us in the class, we had about 15 or 20, to tell the rest of the class about their lives, about their struggles and trials that they had been through. And I listened to others tell their story. One had a brother die at an early age. Another couple had both a son and a daughter that passed away. And I observed how strong their faith was. And when it was my turn to talk, that was the first time that I shared anything about Vietnam. And the second thing was, shortly thereafter, just about every night before I would go to sleep, I would read and I would think about Psalm 91. Today, I know that God sent his angels to protect me in Vietnam. I know that there was an angel in the cockpit with me. I know that the angel put his hands over my hands and maneuvered the aircraft just enough so that the bullets missed a critical part of the aircraft. And I know that there were also a number of times that there were angels outside, and they lifted that aircraft up in their hands and carried that aircraft back to safety. But I also know, and I can say this to the parents who died, when the parents asked the question, did our sons die all alone? The answer is no, Mr. and Mrs. Haynes. No, Mr. and Mrs. Martindale. And no, Mr. and Mrs. Hackler. Your sons did not die alone. And I can also say to you this morning that when your loved ones who have left this world, if they had Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, that they too did not die alone. No Christian ever dies alone. God sent his angels to rescue their souls. And the angels picked those souls up in their hands, and they took them up to heaven, where Jesus Christ was patiently waiting for them with his arms wide open. How do I know that God rescued him? We go back to where we started this morning. We go back to the words that my mother read over and over and over every day when I was in Vietnam. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that your feet will not strike a stone. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. And with long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Now, some in this world do have a long life. 90, very few, but hit 100. Most have average lives, 70s, maybe 80s. Some have very short lives, like my friends who died. Some just have a few days, a few years, and some don't even make it out of the womb alive. But all who have Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior will have long life in heaven, and it shall be forever and ever and ever. Now, when I asked at the beginning, I asked the students to fly with me today. You were going to be my co-pilots. You were part of the action. You were with me on the missions that I shared. However, the rest of you stayed at home. I asked you to imagine that you had loved ones go off to war. But you yourself were not there to get the full feelings of what it was like. Well, I can't leave you this morning without you being part of at least a mission. So I have one last mission to share with you. I shall start with the rescue of a young gal by the name of Jessica Lynch. But really that's just the lead-in, because in the end, the person that is going to be rescued is you. So, on March 23, 2003, Jessica Lynch, 20 years old, an Army private, a supply clerk in the 507th Maintenance Company, was in a convoy in Iraq. Some of the vehicles, including the one that Jessica was in, got separated from the rest of the convoy. And when they came to an intersection, they made a wrong turn. They went down the wrong road, and they were ambushed. The truck that Jessica was in was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, and it rolled over. 11 troops were killed. Jessica Lynch and 5 others were captured. Her injuries included head wounds, broken ribs, broken right arm, broken legs, and a broken ankle. Jessica Lynch was taken by the enemy to a hospital in Nasiriyah, Iraq. And a few days later, United States intelligence received a tip of where she was, and on April 1, 2003, United States Marine and Special Forces stormed the hospital. As the soldiers broke into the room, they yelled, Jessica Lynch, Jessica Lynch, we are American soldiers and we are here to take you home. Her reply to the American soldiers were impressive. I'm an American soldier too. After I read the account of her rescue, I wondered, is that how God sees us? Are we a Jessica Lynch? So often we go along life's way and we get to an intersection in our lives and we make the wrong choice, we make the wrong turn, we go down the wrong road, and then it's just a matter of time before we get ambushed by the evil one. Did God see us like a Jessica Lynch in that hospital bed, wounded, broken, lost, and controlled by the enemy in a helpless and hopeless situation? Is that why God, through his grace, love, and mercy, drew up a battle plan to rescue us? It was the greatest rescue plan of all time. It was daring, it was dangerous, and costly. Whoever went on that rescue mission knew that it was going to cost him his life. But Jesus Christ volunteered to go on that rescue mission. And he did it, and he executed it to perfection. He did it so that we could have joy, love, and fellowship with him, that we can honor and glorify him while we're still here on earth. But he also did it so that someday, when God decides that it's time for our last and final rescue, when God decides that our work on this planet called Earth is done, my hope for you is that when that day comes, as Jessica Lynch heard the American soldiers call her name from that hospital bed in Iraq, so shall you, but in a much greater and grander celebration, shall hear the angels of God call your name, and I shall hear the angels call my name. Ben Jans, Ben Jans, we are angels sent by God. We are friends of Jesus Christ, and we are here to take you home. My prayer is that your simple response to the angels shall be the same as mine. I'm a friend of Jesus Christ too. I'm a friend of Jesus Christ too.